everyone. Thank you very much for coming to this debate. That sounds amazing. So it's about this house believes that religion is no longer relevant in today's society. So as speakers, we have to form the proposition. We have Bacrac, who's a member of Atheism UK, and committee member of Atheism UK. Then we have Andrei Calvarasanu, who's the first year student at the University of Bath in economics. Then to form the proposition, we have Reverend Dr. Bale, who's priest in the Church of England. And then we have Abdullah al Andalusi, who is the co-founder of the Muslim Debate Initiative. Brilliant. So just before we start, we will take pictures of a vote in order to see what are the opinions of all of you before the debate and at the end of the debate, so we can see who won if you changed opinion during the debate. So people that believe that religion is irrelevant in today's society, please raise your hands. People that do believe that religion is relevant in today's society, please raise your hands. Really good, so thank you very much, and now we can start the debate welcoming Bacrac to speak.
Right. Where is the microphone? Okay, right. The strapline of Atheism UK, to which I belong, is challenging religious faith, meaning challenging its factual basis. I support this motion because I believe religious faith performs no essential function today. The main events in people's lives, hatches, matches and dispatches, or births, marriages and deaths, if you like, can now all be very satisfactorily conducted by specially created non-religious ceremonies. I do concede that religious practice will continue in most of the world, although it will continue to decline in the United Kingdom. Even in the United States, the number of atheists increases every year. But for atheists in Arabia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the punishment for apostasy is death. For homosexuals in Uganda, religion is a matter of life and death. They can only long for it to become irrelevant. The Bible was the Maker's manual, which should be attended to and whose directives must be followed. Nevertheless, most of its particular injunctions have been overruled, at least in England, in the last 2 centuries. Divorce is now possible, contraception is now possible, abortion is now legal, shops now open on Sunday, same-sex relations are no longer a crime. Blasphemy is no longer criminalised. Women can become Anglican priests, Anglican bishops. However, voluntary euthanasia is still contested by cowardly MPs, wary of their religious voters. It's only a matter of time before the patient's choice is recognised as of paramount importance. I question how far it really helps anyone to believe in the myth of life after death. Heaven looks like a superior Butlins holiday camp with choir practice for Christians over here and glamorous women for Muslims over there. A place where you meet all your relatives again. Your alternative is hell, a place of eternal torment, perpetual pain. Hell is now just too embarrassing for civilized religious people to confess to believe in, but I dare say it's still in use in some places to terrify children into obedience. one can acknowledge the social benefits that may accrue to following the practices of a religion. For example, the sense of belonging to a group where everyone does the same. In spite of Scripture's soothing advice to love your neighbour, religion readily fosters a them and us mentality. The Quran never tires of reminding us that God condemns to hell the infidels, i.e. those who don't fully assent to its doctrine. Charles Darwin abandoned his faith at the thought that his kind but unbelieving relatives would end up in hell. Alas, religious fanatics anticipate God's intention. Last week they blew up a Sufi shrine, killing 50 Muslims. History abounds with lurid examples of interreligious squabbles. No doubt people still pray that God would make someone well, but the majority put their trust in medical science. You can pray that it won't rain for your country walk, but you still check the forecast. Providence, God's intervention in the world, is quite irrelevant now. Should any dim-witted cleric, present company excluded, venture to assert the cause of a natural disaster, like that Italian earthquake, to be the expression of God's wrath at the sinfulness of the locals, the scorn of the populace is only matched by the acute embarrassment of his wiser colleagues. In the past, everyone could adduce many evidences for God. They were all around us. For example, the very existence of animals and plants, the rainbow following rain. No longer. Today, science has accounted for all the alleged evidences as natural processes, not requiring God's intervention. The rainbow can be seen in the spray from a hosepipe. So isn't God's sign there will never be another flood? Animals and plants have evolved over 4,000 million years by natural selection, an idea the germ of which is found in Lucretius in 50 BC. But to deny special creation of each species was a heresy here until the 19th century. Homo sapiens has been around for a lot longer than Bishop Ussher's biblical chronology of 6,020 years. Meaning? When the first humans, Adam and Eve, rashly disobeyed God, who quite unfairly caused all their descendants, that's all 7,000 million of us, end of time? Okay, I'll finish my sentence. To inherit their sin. I can't continue, what a shame. Right. Sorry about that, if I have to stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech. We'll welcome Reverend Dr. Simon to speak in favour of religion in today's society.
Thank you. I am clearly a Christian. I am a priest, and I advise on interfaith issues for the church in Bath and Wells. That's the diocese you're all sitting in at the moment. But this evening I am not here to make any claims for the truth of the faith I hold. That is for another debate, and much of what we've already heard would be part of that debate rather than this one, I think. This evening I simply desire to make claims for the relevance of religion, of all kinds of religion, whether you find them to be true or, on the other extreme, delusional. If we are going to debate the relevance of religion in our world, we need to understand what we mean by religion and by relevance. And I suggest that the notion of relevance is built around whether an idea, a thing, a person brings about an inevitable and unavoidable response in the world. And that response may be positive or negative. But if there is such a response, then that thing, idea, or person has to be considered relevant. It does not mean that we have to agree with it, nor see it as a good thing, but it is relevant. Nonetheless, and this is very important, there need also be no uniqueness to that idea, thing, or person. Religion does not have to be unique in its consequences in order to be relevant. So what do I mean by religion? The word derives from a notion of connectedness, to religate, to tie together. And religions tie people together, and Norman mentioned that. I would question, they don't just tie the people of religion together. We'll come back to that maybe in our questions. Religion may or may not involve faith or worship. Religion is most often considered in that way, but the important feature for us tonight is that religion encourages unity. And it's these two features, the consequences of religion and the desire for unity, that I propose that religions are relevant today. It operates at three levels: global, national, and local. Locally, religious organisations are not simply places where, for example, on Friday, Saturday or Sunday, the faithful visit to worship and pray. Religious communities have created and run the vast majority of food banks, for example, in this country. They provide shelter and fellowship for those in need. And for sure, they reach into their neighbourhoods and provide resources for the bereaved. They offer space and openness for those who struggle in family life. Yes, there are other agencies who do this. But as someone who has for the last quarter of a century worked in a community context, and for half of that as an atheist, I know that those who do this as an organised religious community are effective and valuable because of their desire to care and build unity. The fellowship that emerges from sharing food at a food bank is every bit as valuable as the food itself. Religion unites because it helps us care for each other. Nationally, for centuries, the Church in particular in this country has been at the heart of government. The laws of the nation and of many others around the world are founded on the beliefs and attitudes of religious thinking. The ethical framework of many nations have grown from the ethical basis of religions, and today religious communities are often to be found at the front of the queue when it comes to questioning whether sufficient attention is being given to the implementation of government policies. Austerity and welfare, healthcare, employment conditions, financial literacy have all been questioned in recent times by the Church, for example. Religious people talk about justice and about human flourishing. We talk about peacemaking and taking care for the poor. We talk about the need for security and defending the weak. We suggest that it's better to be reasonably comfortably off rather than dirt poor. What religion doesn't do, however, is tell you the best way to arrange state health care. It doesn't tell you whether capitalism is better or worse than socialism. It doesn't tell you to stop spending money on defence, and it doesn't tell you how much you ought to be spending. Rather, religion provides an ethical framework through which these issues can be addressed. And once again, religion is built around the desire for unity, a desire to bring people together rather than separate them out as we strive for ethical identity. And globally, the desire to bring unity can ironically be seen as divisive. Most of the current global conflicts might be seen as having a basis in conflicting systems of belief, and therefore that religion is anything but unifying. Well, I would suggest, however, that these conflicts are based on the hunger for power, and those who peddle such horror are basing their actions on a perverted understanding of religion. At their heart, the global faiths seek peace. They are based on a hope for a better future and are founded on a desire for all people to live together. Now, it's often argued, and I don't know if Norman would say this, that religion is the product of our psychology and that the billions of people who follow a religion are misguided. I would argue that it isn't, of course. But even if it is possible to suggest that we are all deluded, then there are billions of people who are deluded. And it seems entirely irresponsible to classify those people as irrelevant. Religion may not be something personally you value, but it cannot be considered irrelevant if it motivates the billions of people it serves. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech. Now we welcome Andrei Calvarasanu to talk.
Distinguished members of the staff, fellow students and lovely guests, it is my honor to welcome you all to this debate of utmost importance in today's society. Let me begin by saying that I am extremely thankful to be part of this debate as a speaker for the proposition, representing both our distinguished debating society and the University of Bath as a whole. My speech consists of two arguments, followed by a conclusion that summarizes what I will have said until that point. But let's begin by thinking about what religion really is and how does it affect our society. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Are we better off? I remember when I was a little boy, my mother would always wake me up every Sunday morning early to go to the church, pray for my sins to be forgiven, pray for our health, and pray for a better word. As a naive child, little did I know about religion at that time, and to my embarrassment, I didn't even have the curiosity to study the depth of religion. On the other side, at the same age, my father would always buy me books about cosmos, physics, and history. He used to tell me that one cannot live an ignorant life without exploring the beauty of science and without paying tribute to those who had previously spent their entire life making discovery after discovery. Nevertheless, it's easy to spot the differences between my father's advice and my mother's. However, there is one thing that they both tried to nurture through me, and that is to be a good person. Years had passed and I was a completely new person. This whole time I've fallen in love with astrology, quantum physics and religion. But when I say that I've fallen in love with religion, it's not what you think of. At that point, I used to study religion as a source of science fiction material. Yes, maybe a children's book would have seemed more believable than the religion at that point. And that is still unchanged even to this day. In 5 years' time, I have discovered that there are over 4,000 religions, each with a different goal or different gods, given the case. There are just too many religions, all claiming to be the true one. How can that be? My mother taught me that there is only one God and only one way of doing things. How come the most powerful empire at that time, the Egyptian Empire, used to have a different religion? Could Ra, Anubis, Horus, Thoth be all a lie? Parchments and manuscripts show how they idolize these gods, each having a different role in their religion. But what about Hinduism? How can over 1 billion people be wrong? Buddhism, Judaism, Taoism. The list can go on forever because while I'm speaking, another two religions might have made their appearance. And then it struck me. There is no whatsoever piece of evidence that could prove the existence of these religions and artificially created gods. People have created various religions with various gods throughout time, choosing to believe what they want to believe, considering all kinds of little things to be sins. This is when I realized people would rather kill their sons, kill their daughters, their wives, just because they committed a sin, rather than love them, kiss them, or spend time with them. So where are we now? Welcome to a mad world where religion is not well understood and where people create religions just for the sake of it. My first argument is quite what you expected, and that is religion hinders scientific endeavor. There is a lot to be told about this controversial topic, but I'll try to be straight to the point. Even from the beginning, religion has opposed science, concocting childish arguments for every discovery ever made. It has dismissed evolution, the Big Bang Theory, and embryology as lies straight from the pit of hell. However, it seems to be much more reasonable that we are all descendants of Adam and Eve, who, by the way, were magically created, and it seems more reasonable that even until today, no one knows who wrote the Bible or the Quran. On the other hand, extraterrestrial life has been totally denied because we are the only civilization ever created, or that's what religion wants us to believe. You cannot expect people to just believe that in a continuous expanding universe, we are alone. Science is starting to answer all of the big questions. Questions like, how did we get here? Where did we come from? Where are we going? Have been with us for our entire existence, and we are finally reaching a point in our development where we are beginning to be able to address them. Going back to the Bible example, just think for 1 second. If God or a messenger of God had written that particular religious book, how come the writings only occur within a very limited period in human history? Also, consider the fact that a human writing on a piece of paper or a few pieces of paper is not the word of God. If they were really written by a universal God and entity, the books would not be limited to some pre-medieval costume drama, but would encompass all universality, history, and the future and the science. Even by looking in the past, we can see how religion has hindered scientific progress. When Galileo Galilei held a theory that Earth revolved around the sun, a theory now known to be true, the Church disapproved of this theory because of the Holy Scriptures that state that the Earth is at the center, not the sun. As the contents of the Bible were taken literally, the publishing of Galileo's book proved to the Church that Copernicus and Galileo were sinners. They preached through their writing that the Bible was wrong, but all they got in return was banishing, and their right to ever write again was revoked. My second argument that supports my position in this debate is that religion has been a major cause of conflict since its advent. Without doubt, the majority of people would say that this is incorrect and conflicts only arise as a consequence of disputes for oil, land and wealth. At the same time, people are happy to overlook conflict caused by religious differences. Why are the pointless deaths of millions perfectly acceptable in this instance? We are taught about World War II and Vietnam in schools, yet the Crusades, Northern Ireland and the Spanish Inquisition are often overlooked. What makes the deaths of those involved in these conflicts less important than the death of civilians in Vietnam? And now, in the 21st century, when we expect we have become individuals with values and virtues, capable of understanding others, capable of sharing and harvesting love, we open our eyes, and what we see is the exact opposite. Terrorists who kill in the name of their God, people who punish their relatives in the name of their God, and so on and so forth. Wars fought over differing religious beliefs have claimed more lives than any other event in history and caused people to go on suicide missions. People are starting to see through religion. Its relevance has been heavily diminished, primarily on the grounds of bigotry, as well as the simple fact that people are sick of being lied to. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this passionate debate, and then we'll welcome Abdullah al Andalusi to talk in favour of religion in today's society.
Bismillah. I'd like to thank the University of Bath Debating Society for graciously inviting me and my esteemed colleagues here today who've come to speak on the motion, and the audience for your attendance and your attentive ears. Now, there's quite a few historical fallacies that were mentioned. I mean, just to name a few, Galileo, his book was actually patroned by the Catholic Church. It was actually an insult he wrote in his book that earned him censure, and he wasn't punished corporally for it per se. The proposer of Big Bang was Georges Lemaitre, a Belgian Catholic priest who disagreed with Einstein, who didn't like the idea of the Big Bang, but we can thank the idea of Big Bang being initially posited by, well, literally a religious person, a religious priest, who was also a mathematician. So those are all historical fallacies, but we'll get to that a bit more in the Q&A. Now, at first, most people interpret the title to be another religion, like it or hate it debate. However, the title isn't about your feelings concerning religion or any particular religion. It's about the current realities of the world today, and religion is obviously still a part of it, and therefore still relevant in one way or another to everyone. Now, religion in the conventional demotic sense currently is imagined to mean a belief in a higher being or spirituality which comes with an accompanying morality system. People tend to think that religion describes what people do when they join a group that holds a belief in a higher power they can't see and has no physical presence. Its followers point to sacred areas where they claim their higher power exists or lives, and they hold sacred symbols representing their higher power. Its followers follow a type of leader caste that tells them the will of this higher power and makes edicts in its name and enforces upon them, telling them it's in the higher power's interests to do so or to do something else, and sometimes even telling them to go to war and kill in its name. Its martyrs are honored with statues and celebrated, and believers sing hymns praising it with eternal glory. Did I just describe religion, or was it nationalism? The nation state, the national will, the national interest, the national anthem, all concepts that have not one iota of physical existence outside of our imaginations, and yet we kill, fight and die for them. And this brings us to the Oxford English Dictionary definition of religion, which doesn't just say it represents a belief in a superhuman power, but any particular system of faith and worship. Quite simply, all beliefs, morals, and laws are metaphysical, a word that simply means about the physical. Any worldview or belief system that directs your lives is a religion. In Arabic, the word for religion is called deen, and it simply means your way of life and beliefs. So put bluntly, everyone here has a deen, a religion. You might call it secular humanism, communism, New Age spirituality, or just Christianity. These are all religions in effect and practice. The ideas of equality, justice, mercy, good and bad are not material objects, nor are people's ideas about them objective or all the same. If you believe in them, this is your faith, and there is no society that can make laws without morals, and no morals that do not come from a worldview. So in reality, you don't need to live in a theocracy for religion to have relevance, only in a society of humans. So unless you're a nihilist, you have a religion. Welcome to the club. The next point I wish to make is merely to draw your attention to the current reality. Putting aside the Oxford English Dictionary, even conventional religions are still relevant today and going strong. Currently, adherents of the largest denominations of religion have a big influence and effect in our lives today. The Church of England provides 1/3 of the primary and secondary schooling institutions in the UK. The charity sector involves a significant portion of religious-based charities, and recent reports have found that people who affiliate themselves to a religion tend to donate as much as 3 times more than those who don't affiliate themselves with a religion. Religious trusts and community centres have continued to play a major role in servicing the needs of UK society. And if we also count the personal morality of each adherent, then majorities of people in almost every country, bar China and North Korea, implement parts of their religious morality on a day-to-day basis en masse. Religion is therefore all around us, even if UK politicians and media try to avoid raising the topic, unless, of course, it involves the religious practices of immigrant minorities. However, if we expand our horizons to other societies, we see religion on the rise outside the West. China, for example, is experiencing a rise of Christianity through its middle class, and evangelical Christianity spreads through South America, Islam spreads through Africa, and even if we come back to the West, we see that the USA, which is now renamed the Disunited States of Trump, has powerful Christian lobbies. Continental Europe's most powerful country, Germany, is headed by Angela Merkel, whose party is the Christian Democratic Union. So, of course, the biggest evidence I could put today is not even these things. It's actually the fact that we all came here today to discuss this issue, which shows that we all believe that religion is relevant on some level. No one would debate the motion, is alchemy still relevant in modern science? No one would debate the motion, is astrology still relevant in modern astronomy? I'll finish my sentence. So the fact you have attended here today clearly shows its relevance, and today's title is not a debate on preference, but a debate on the sociological facts, and ever increasingly in the world, and for the time being in the West, religion remains a part of people's lives and public awareness, and therefore relevant to all who must negotiate the modern world. Thank you.
So thank you very much for the speech. And now we will open for 30 minutes the floor to questions and answers. So feel free to ask any questions you may have to one speaker in particular or everyone. Go for it.
Surely religion is still relevant in society when you consider that many theist religions, very many civic religions derive a lot from theist religions. So therefore, a lot of what we believe actually is derived from those sort of beliefs in religion. So, for example, lots of Christian values, despite atheists saying that they're not Christian, actually have a lot of Christian values. So surely that makes it relevant.
I hear your point, and I agree with you. However, we've got to be careful we don't pretend that Christianity created the notion that murder is wrong. It was wrong before Moses received the Ten Commandments. It's rather like suggesting that Newton invented gravity. You know, gravity is there, as is the ethical reason why we don't kill. We've codified that, certainly in this nation, as a Christian nation, until recently. But it's something which I think is that religion taps into, which goes deeper even than the religions themselves, which gets to the point which I think Norma mentioned about, or one of you mentioned about there only being one God, therefore how can there be lots of religions? Actually, we are experiencing in our lives the manifestation of what you're saying, which is that there is something beyond us which brings about an ethical framework to our lives. And at all levels, that comes out. So, the Ten Commandments are not just Jewish or Christian or Abrahamic. Well, they're not Abrahamic at all, sorry. They're Judeo-Christian. But there is something which everybody taps into, because there is something deeper still than that, which we all value.
You touch on the question, I think, of the origin of morality, and I totally agree with the Bishop that...
Bishop? Please no, not Bishop. Give me time. Thank you. That's okay, Fred.
I totally agree with you that morality existed prior to and independent of Christianity. You have to look at other religions, the Greeks, the Romans, and one could say that we are social animals, and therefore we have inherited the brain capacity to invent moral systems, which we've done. And so that's really what we've done, really. Thank you.
If I just might quickly interject, I would say that a lot of the morality currently in the West, even some doctrines of liberalism, came ultimately from Christianity. John Locke, who was considered to be the father of modern liberalism, was a devout Christian, and he based his ideas on the belief of a natural right. Everyone has natural rights, but obviously in nature, does nature give you your rights? I mean, if you're on an island with lions, tigers and bears, would they respect your right to life? No, probably not. So where do rights come from? And John Locke posited that it came from God, and it was imbued in this universe that every human being has natural dignity and has a right to life. Nature doesn't care about this. Cancer doesn't care, tidal waves don't care, earthquakes don't care about your right to life. So John Locke took from religion to produce a morality system. Today, people tend to take the morality system and cut off its origin, thinking, we don't need the original justifications for this morality system. However, what has replaced it has been utilitarianism, the belief that, a right is good because it creates the greatest benefit. And this kind of thinking is now allowed people to justify things like the torture, for example, CIA torture against terror suspects. They said, if it's for the greater good, then sure, we can torture people. And the only debate you saw between people on that topic was, does torture work? How do we know it works? No one really said, wait a second, whether it works or not, whether it saves lives or not, it is just barbaric. No, the debate was, does it work or does it not work? And this is something very worrying, where our humanity has come to when we just rely on this purely materialistic calculus of what is in the quote-unquote greater good, which itself is a nebulous concept.
One sentence reply. I was referring to the fact, if you look at the animal kingdom, a mother lion looks after its cubs, and mother mammals look after their young. This is natural. It's what I mean when I say the love for one's relatives and so on, looking after it, is a natural thing that we inherit because we're animals. It's not something that has to be ordered for us to do. No one orders a mother whale to look after its baby whale. It is natural for it to do so.
There's other things.
Theology is natural. I said that's a different debate, and I agree. That's cruel of me to say that, sorry.
Other questions? Yeah, go for it.
I wanted to address how you were saying that our laws are based around religious tenets, especially when it comes to, say, the commandments. If you look at the first commandment, that you only worship the Judeo-Christian God, yet you look at sort of nearly every Western society has a very important part of its laws. You can worship whatever you want. It's the First Amendment in America. So I would say that if you look at sort of those sorts of commandments, that it is almost the opposite that is now part of our laws. And if you look at, as you were saying about sort of thou shalt kill and such, I think very much did exist sort of before that. It's very much to do sort of mutual benefit. A society can't exist if you can't trust that when you go outside you're not going to get murdered. So I would say that actually, out of, say, the Ten Commandments, half of them are just natural mutual benefit, and the other half are actually not enforced.
Okay, yeah. I would say in response to the first point about there is no God but me, well, actually, ontologically, true. There is only one notion of God. God being great, the thing greater than which everything else is. So there must only be one God. Okay, that's the ontological proof. Okay, you can debate that again in another debate, but that's St. Anselm's ontological proof, about 1100 I think it was, saying that God is the notion we have, that there is nothing greater than that. Okay? On that basis, the commandment isn't to say to worship only one Judeo-Christian God. It just so happens that's how we perceive it in this nation, because I think we have man-made, person-made, but actually, apologies, man-made, sadly, most of the laws in our nation to become human. But there is still only one God. And that's how my theology works out. So I'm not saying that is one of the other half, other than the thou shalt not kill. I think there is only one God, and people worship God. Okay, Hinduism has manifestations of that God, but there's still Brahma, and there's an avatar, and it's one thing. There is no God but Allah.
Yes, so we believe the same God. Yeah,
I mean, we can debate that a bit more, but actually a lot of these laws also come down to us through the workings of human brains, which are pretty ropey sometimes. We still develop our theories of law. We still develop our theories of science. We still develop our theologies, and I think nothing is standing still. So even though it was mentioned earlier about why was it that the Bible was written just at that time? Well, it was written at that time. Get over it. It was. Also, Socrates only lived and died in 399 BC. Well, he was. That's when it happened. It was the axial age. Lots of stuff was happening. There was a Buddha, and he died around about the same time. You know, the Bible was written at that time because, well, it was. And we have since then interpreted it, and we still interpret the words in that Bible. And we still get it wrong. I think one of the problems that people have with religion is when they think that it actually thinks it has the answers. I know I don't have the answers. That's the only answer I have. Which is pretty Socratic, actually. Because Socrates said he didn't know anything and asked everybody else to talk to him about what they thought they knew. And Socrates, Christ and Buddha wrote nothing down. They lived about the same time. Everybody else wrote down everything else that they said. We struggle with those words. But we come back to the feeling we have inside us, which is that there is a faith to be had. And that those laws come from that.
If I might just also interject some details. I'll say that there is remnants of Christianity and Judaism in the law system. The ancient kingdom of Israel believed that those who were non-Israelites, who were amongst them, who would be living in the same area with them, were not to be coerced into belief in the one God. So you had pagans living amongst the ancient Israelites as well. And the Bible says not to coerce these strangers who live amongst you, those who are not Israelites. Secondly, the laws on bigamy, incest, and adultery are very distinctly Christian, because I could point examples of other cultures in history, or even now, that don't necessarily hold these to be taboo. But we hold them to be taboo, and this is a remnant from Christianity, and it affects people's taste to this very day. There'll be atheists who think that incest is disgusting, and also that think that adultery is morally wrong. How is it morally wrong from a basis other than Christianity, Judaism, or Islam, or other religions? They might find hard to explain, but they just said, I just know it's wrong. Meaning, I was raised like this. My society I grew up in just told me this is wrong, and I felt it, and I copied it. But I would also say that there are modern day types of there are types of absolutism which can be intolerant, such as there should be no greater loyalty than that to your own nation state, right? Minorities in the UK have suffered because of that principle. Catholics were persecuted because they were suspected of having higher loyalties to the Pope and not to the magistrate of England, as in the King of England or the Queen of England. Then it was Jews, and now you see with all the rhetoric you see in the media, Muslims are suspected of where do our loyalties lie. And David Cameron even mentioned that the problem is that Muslims have this idea of a greater global community called the Ummah, and not a loyalty to the nation state. And he mentioned this. David Cameron said this. So this is a problem that nationalism creates, and nationalism is a completely secular ideology in and of itself. So these are things to consider, but you cannot pin the blame on religion. At best, you can pin the blame on humans, that this is a recurring phenomenon amongst humans, that intolerance. But intolerance happens in any human society, and tolerance can happen in any human society. It depends, in many cases, the sociological factor. But I'd like to say that throughout history, the idea that people could live amongst other people following a radically different religion and be told to tolerate that religion is very Abrahamic, and it's quite distinctly Abrahamic. It's something that you could say the Abraham or the Abrahamic kind of tradition really emphasized. Because even in ancient Rome, we had different, let's say, deities people worshipped. There was still an expectation that the emperor you must burn a pinch of incense to the emperor. All Romans must do so, right? Whereas amongst ancient Israelites and amongst, obviously, Islamic conceptions of multiculturalism, people who are not Muslim are not expected to be under the Sharia and to have it imposed upon them or to worship the same God we worship. And this is, again, an Abrahamic tradition. So I'd say that Abrahamic traditions have actually created more tolerance in the world than others arguably have.
Just to say that the reason millions of people all over the world seem to want to come to certain parts of Europe, Britain and Scandinavia, is because they are nearly, if not completely, secular. You can have any religion or none within them, and the government does not actively foster and insist that you belong to one particular religion. So I think that we should look forward to secular states, that's to say states where the government is different from the religion, spreading throughout the world. And when that happens, I think most of the world will be much happier.
Can I just come back to that, Norman? I think I agree with you about that notion of our society is free and comparatively to many other places in the world, and it's a sustainable, stable, secure society. I would argue that has come about through many centuries of evolution in theology, in politics, in sociology, in science, in all kinds of reason. But I would still say underneath that it's still Christian. But I would say that, wouldn't I? I appreciate that. But the reason I say that is because actually all Christianity is tapping into the goodness that there is in the world. And to say that we then should jettison Christianity because we have discovered secularism would be actually to say that we are turning our back on the very foundation that has brought us to secularism. You can't have one without the other. It is the foundation of the building we sit in. And that Christianity is still in secularism. It is still an aspect of secularism.
One sentence. The humanist position is that all religions were actually created by human beings. So even if they're in the form of religion or alleged to be a revelation of God, they are in fact human creations. And therefore there's no earthly reason why humanists and atheists can't appropriate any part of any religious doctrine or belief they think is right, because they don't have to believe it came from a God or some transcendental source. They can accept it as just a human creation as well.
Just a very, very, very quick sentence. I'd like my dear colleague Norman to explain why, if all immigration is based on people just wanting to go to secular areas, explain, let's say, English people going to Dubai to work. I think you'll find that people immigrate for mostly economic reasons, and there wasn't much immigration to the West before colonialism. So these kind of questions we have to ask ourselves, because I don't think people, when they want to come to the Western countries, are doing so because purely of the ideology of the Western nations. But in most cases, if you actually speak to people who are first-generation immigrants, it was because their countries are either unstable due to war or due to many instances that came about after colonialism, and they're trying to find a better economic situation for themselves than they previously had. So I don't think we should put too much credit to just the ideology of the state.
Go forever on that one.
Go for it. You. Not the long lady. Sorry.
Behind you.
You. Yeah,
I'm just wondering if we could touch a bit more on the them versus us mentality, because surely any ideology creates this kind of mentality, including atheism.
I think that's a question directed to me, because I did say that the them and us, I was only saying that just open the Quran. I don't mean to pick on the Quran, but open that enormous book at almost any page, and you will hear or read how God will punish the infidels. So you've got this distinction between the people who are in our religion, in our particular branch of it, and everyone else who's an infidel. I think this is a deeply bad feature of religions. And an atheist or a humanist can accept everyone as an equal human being, whatever their beliefs, and also recognise that everyone is the product, I never got a chance to say this, of their heredity and environment. And therefore everyone's action at any moment is a necessary action for that person. You can persuade them to change in the future, but the action they take is a result of their life history. And this means you've got to be compassionate to every other person, if you're an atheist.
Because the Quran was in tone there, I think I should respond. Firstly, have you heard Dawkins' rhetoric about religious believers versus enlightened atheists? Richard Dawkins is quite a colourful individual in that regard. As to the Quranic concept of kufr or kafir, which is the Arabic word sometimes translated as infidels, what you'll actually find is it really refers to, what it itself explains, refers to those who are insincere to the truth, not those necessarily who just don't happen to label themselves Muslim. There's even a verse in the Quran that says that those Jews and Christians, and refers to a few other religious denominations, who are righteous and they want justice, on the Day of Judgment they won't be grieving, they won't be punished, basically, right? Because if they were righteous and they were just and they worship God, then this saved them. So sincerity saves the individual. And if you look at the discussion of how the Quran describes what you call, quote-unquote, infidels, it says that the infidel will never accept the truth. So if that's the case, then what's the point? If the Muslims truly believed your interpretation of this, what would be the point of trying to invite people to Islam or to any religion if we thought that these people are incapable of accepting religion? No, it clearly makes sense if you understand it that on the Day of Judgment, there'll be those who are insincere, and those are the infidels which the Quran refers to. Because if you understand Islamic theology, there'll be people who are called Muslim in this life, and on the Day of Judgment, they'll be infidels, because in their heart they were insincere, unjust people. And there'll be those who were called non-Muslim in this life, and on the Day of Judgment, they'll be considered to be saved because they were sincere and just. So if you're going to cite scripture, please take care not to misrepresent it.
I don't believe in a day of judgment, because God knows that every single person had to behave in the way they did. Therefore, he will not employ judgment in the sense of retribution. So that whole concept is utterly illogical. One of the chief defects of Judaism, Christianity and Islam, and for all I know, all religions, they all have retribution and God as a judge. We'll have to abandon that whole way of looking at human nature.
Could I come back on that, please? There's two things I'd like to come back on. One, that last point. Sorry, shouldn't point at you. The last point about retribution. We're into this domain where I disagree. I don't believe in the same God that Richard Dawkins doesn't believe in. I know, but it's that sort of argument. The God that I follow, I have faith in. I won't mention him again, I promise. The God that I have faith in is not retributional. The God that I have faith in is actually a God of good, a God of grace, a God of mercy and forgiveness. Okay, fair enough. I appreciate I'm getting onto that, and I think that we have a danger. We are in danger sometimes as people of faith, ourselves, of being too Gnostic. Can I use that word, Gnostic? Believing in that actually all the material world is somehow evil and all we strive for is the spiritual domain. What rubbish, if I may say so, and apologies to any Gnostics who are in the congregation. You see what I said then? Any Gnostics in the audience. Gnosticism is something which is, I think, totally abhorrent to my faith, Christianity, because Jesus is actually the incarnate version of God, and what matters to me is the here and now. The here and now of this world, literally of this room at this moment, is the most important thing to me. Now, when it comes back to your point about even atheism causes dissent, you may see on my wristband here, which is when I was chaplain to Pride, Western Pride last year, I wear this band with pride because it's important to me. I'm part of an organisation called Inclusive Church, which strives to encourage all churches to be inclusive. You would think that they are already, but they're sadly not, because even within Christianity, as the Reformation shows, there is dissent. We are creatures of limited resources and we fight, and it's awful. But what Christianity encourages is to not go down that route and to seek resolutions, reconciliation between each other. Now, one of the things about inclusive church is that it's often to do with sexuality, and in my church there are people who are very much against alternative sexualities. I am not. I have to be inclusive of them as well as those who I think have the same views as me. As a priest, I want to include everybody, even the people who hate me. And that is the difference, I think, between often what happens in secularism, which can tend to forget about the desire to unify. And I know that there are people in faith communities who do the same. But for me, the relevance of faith is that it gives us the keys to a unified humanity. And that is what matters. And that is why I think atheism misses the point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have a question here yet?
I think my question may have kind of already been answered by that, but it was to the proposition meant to bring it back to the relevance of the question, really.
Good, thank you.
Would the proposition consider, and I can pick many examples, but this is just one that I've heard, would the proposition consider gay rights a relevant issue? Would you consent that the major opposition to gay rights in the US is based upon religion? And would that not mean that religion is relevant?
Can I? Who wants to go first? I'm happy to go first.
Yeah.
Oh, no, Norman go. Let Norman go. That's fine.
I took the motion, the wording of the motion to mean that when it says religion, it's a great shame that it is relevant. In other words, it would be better if it were irrelevant. So that kind of issue that you're referring to, same-sex relationships, should not be part which its view stems from the various religions. I'm on the side saying it's a pity that their views are relevant, and it would be better if they were irrelevant, such as in this country where we've got beyond that point of making those relations criminal. I don't know if that answers your point. They're relevant in the sense that they're still a problem in the United States, a problem in Uganda, a problem in the world, but that's because of religion. But that's really my point. Okay.
Could I challenge Norman on that? That they are a problem because of religion. I don't agree. I fundamentally don't agree that this argument about sexuality, and I've already come clean. I mean, I'm straight, but I'm very, very much a supporter of homosexual attitudes. Okay. And I think that the problem in America, there's a chap here asked about the particular issue in America, and it's not just America, as you mentioned Uganda as well. It's not about religion. Religion is used again to try and make it somehow more profound. Actually, it's just basic ignorance. It's basic bigotry, in my opinion. Apologies to anybody here who I'm offending, and I'm happy to make it up with you later. But it is using Leviticus 23, which is where the usual bigotry comes through, to prove, therefore, that homosexuality is wrong. Religion is being used. Religion is not the cause of it. It is being used by people who are perverting the actual message of our faith.
Yes. Well, I hope you can convince your Ugandan...
I wish I could. It's a long process.
Good luck to you.
But if we can do that, then we can do anything, I think. So onward and upward, I agree.
Any other questions? Yes. Yeah.
Go on, your turn.
Yeah.
Going back to what the third speaker said about the relationship between science and religion, where you gave the example of the Bible, like you interpret it as like opposing the scientific theories such as the Big Bang or evolution. Do you also like have on the mind that maybe science and religion can actually be best friends? So, like, maybe God did create the Big Bang theory.
Yeah, that would be the perfect scenario, actually. But if you have the Bible like separately and you don't think of science at all, you don't really see not a essence of science in it, because it all states that it's not magically created, but created by a universal God. And it kind of sounds weird to me that when God said, okay, let's do this Big Bang, because if you think about it, he said that he did in the first day something, in the second day something, in the third day something. So it's a big difference, because the Big Bang was all at once.
If I might interject in that as well. I think this kind of dichotomy between science and religion is incredibly anachronistic from the 19th century. I think any history student should be able to tell you this. As Europe became more secular, atheists became a bit more emboldened and literally wrote history books rewriting history on the fact the Dark Ages wasn't because of Christianity. The Western Roman Empire fell. It was a Christian empire. It was advanced. It fell. German barbarians took over, which is probably where most people, Europeans, are descended from now today. And they had to be taught from the ground up, the basics, by the remnant Catholic Church, which then, after encountering the Islamic civilization, which was a religious civilization, led to the first universities being built by, finish the sentence, the Catholic Church, building the first universities in Europe to actually teach people the new sciences. And as I said, Galileo, the book he was writing, looking at the geocentric theory and comparing it to the other theories, whether it's the sun-centered or is it earth-centered. That book was commissioned and patroned by the Pope, who was an avid patron of science.
Yeah, but after he realized that he was right, because first he was...
No, because the story is, well, we know what the actual situation was. The Galileo was told by the Pope, explain both sides fairly equally. And in it, he portrayed the person who believed that the sun orbits the earth. He called that person Simplicio in the book, which means stupid, simpleton. And that's why he was basically censored. And he wasn't burned to the stake or whipped or whatever. He was told to stay at home and do penance, where you do, Hail Marys and all this kind of stuff. Quite a few thousand of them. That was it. That is literally what happened to Galileo. And as for the Big Bang, I mean, that is even more shocking that you mentioned what you said, because the person who posited the Big Bang, the person who put a credible formula to explain why we have redshift, was Georges Lemaitre, a Belgian priest, of which Einstein didn't like his idea. They wanted, the majority of scientists, of which Einstein was one of them, believed in the steady state theory, that the universe had always been the way it was for eternity. It was Georges Lemaitre, a Belgian Catholic priest, who said, no, I think my formula explains the situation better. And the word Big Bang was actually a pejorative term by the scientists of the steady state theory to say, what is this theory they talk about, Big Bang? And then it stuck.
Fred Hoyle.
Right? So in that sense, the more, you could say, secular-minded of the scientists were actually an obstacle that had to be overcome by the religious-minded scientists. But no one knows this. And so that's what I'm saying, your history, if you don't mind me saying, needs to be checked before you say it, because these are common tropes which are actually just not true, and any history student could tell you that these things are fundamentally not the case. And just to make an extra point, the Eastern Roman Empire didn't fall, it was Christian. Why do we have all the philosophy books preserved today? Because they were still teaching Greek philosophy in the academies of the Eastern Roman Empire, or the Byzantines as they're called. And we have them preserved. The Muslims encountered them, we translated them, and that's why they're preserved to this day. So you can thank Christian institutions and empires, and Muslims as well, for the preservation and expansion of knowledge, and dare I say, the Enlightenment itself.
answer the original question, in my opinion, science and religion can coexist as long as you don't take scientific statements from religious tracts, because they're all liable to be wrong. We've heard a lot about the Big Bang. Can I say, last week I went to a lecture by Roger Penrose, a prominent cosmologist. He does not believe in the Big Bang. So I think it's a bit dangerous for religious people to hang so much weight on a particular scientific theory when physicists and cosmologists are at this moment busy working out what might have preceded the Big Bang and other alternative forms of cosmology. So don't take anything scientific from religion and hold it to be absolutely true, because you're liable to get your fingers burnt.
George Lamont wasn't taking any biblical interpretation. He was a mathematician, a physicist, and that was his scientific opinion about the matter. I'm not saying we should use scripture to interpret science. I'm merely saying that I can point to historical examples where those who were more, should we say, secular-minded were actually more of an obstacle to science than those who were religious. That's all I'm saying.
Can I have one point, just 1 minute, actually? I think interesting stuff, and I'm, as a scientist and an evolutionist, I'm totally interested in all these things. However, again, Norman mentioned, don't take any scientific interpretation from Scripture. I agree. We are doing again, dare I say, all of us, is descending into this whether or not the Bible is true stuff. Actually, we're here to talk about the relevance of religions in our world, and we'll go back to this debate that sadly many people who voted for Mr. Trump get confused about, whether or not there is anything to be said for evolution or anything else. We need to get away from all that. Religions are about how we live our lives and how we build successful and sustainable societies which care for people on the edges of those societies, and that is what makes, I think, religion relevant, because it does that.
Just one question, you.
I would like to question Mr. Abdullah. You said communism could be regarded as a religion, and this I find extremely weak. We should make a clear distinction between faith, passion, religion, and belief. I could believe in capitalism, and my passion could be money. But then, could you also say that in the same way you could say North Korean religion is dictatorship, absolute dictatorship, and our Kim Jong-un is the god? So, of course, religion would be relevant in such a way if you regard everything as a religion. But if you regard it specifically to Christianity, Islam, and all the rest of religions, actual religions, then this could change the debate. So I just disapprove of your first.
Okay, well, just to kind of clarify it. So I said that any belief in something that is metaphysical, so which is not physical in essence, belief in equality, belief in rights or individual rights for everyone, or belief in justice or good and bad, these are all beliefs which are not physical. The things which you're talking about are not physical things. The law itself is not even a physical thing, right? We believe in these things and we act according to these beliefs. Now the question is, where do these beliefs come from? And the communists would say, well, I believe the world came about by dialectical materialism between thesis and antithesis, and that all culture and religion could be explained by the means of production at the time, all this stuff. They have a worldview, an entire worldview that explains thought, morality, culture, economics, that it has the same effect of what religion was in the ancient world. In fact, the belief that religion only deals with theology and not with politics or how to view the world is a secular, modern and Western concept. Because in Judaism was meant to be an entire law system and way of life for Jews. The Torah means law, right? Hinduism, the name is not, a Hindu wouldn't call his religion Hinduism, he'd call it Hindu Dharma, which means the Hindu law, Hindu way. So we're being anachronistic when we say that religion is only about spirituality or something. No. Religion in the ancient world and up to the medieval times was a way of life. It had a worldview, it had morals, and it had a way of understanding history and understanding other civilizations. And that is exactly what communism does and what any other secular humanism does. They all do the same thing. And depending on which denomination you are within these groups, you might have certain aspects of rituals. For example, the British Humanist Association, which is a secular humanist organisation in the UK, they have humanist marriages and humanist funerals. They try to arrange what they call an alternative to the other religions. They have a secular humanist kind of way of doing these rituals, right, with symbolism and meaning. Yeah, and that is a religion. So that's what I'm saying. I'm actually using it in its broadest sense and its original sense, which was a complete way of life, with a worldview and a morality that comes from that worldview and directions for how humans should conduct themselves. And in that case, unless you are a nihilist or a solipsist, everyone has a religion.
Yes, and clearly it's not a way of life today. So you just disprove.
Well, what is not a way of life today?
Religion is not a way of life today. So it might have been relevant in the ancient medieval times.
What you're also saying is that the conventional religions of the past are no longer in power in the West, but something else is in power in the West. That's all you're really saying. You're saying that the West has a new religion, be it a type of secular humanism or liberalism or so on. Yeah, but all you're saying is that one religion has been surpassed by another. That's all you're saying, but it's still religion, nonetheless. That's my argument.
I don't think it's helpful to call communism a religion. It is certainly an ideology, which is another word which you can use. I think it's best to keep the word religion for a belief in a supernatural deity or something of that sort. And if otherwise, you call everything religion, the word ceases to have any meaning. Some people say their football team is their religion, but this is clearly just a metaphor. It's not meant to be taken literally.
I tend to agree with you, Norman. I do think we can be too liberal with our approach to this, but actually I think the important thing is that we have a tendency as humans to create structures around which we gather. And what is perceived often as a negative is that when we gather around my particular selection of laws and beliefs, and then somebody comes up with something that's different, there is a tendency sometimes to think that ours are better than theirs. And that is where conflict happens. But that doesn't just happen around religions in that strict sense. It happens around ideologies as well. And I think we have to recognise that if we disagree with all kinds of religion as making them irrelevant, then something else will pop up instead. I think we have to recognise our own psychological response to the need to gather.
So thank you very much for these questions and answer. And I will call each speaker to speak for 1 minute to summarise their main points.
Not possible.
And at the end of these 4 speeches, we'll count votes again.
I'd like to include Simon as one of the potential humanist atheists, even though he's nominally.
I'd say that as a compliment.
He's still so rational. But if I had to summarise this, certainly religion is very important in the world today. That's what I tried to say. I also tried to say that many of the particular religious doctrines in this country have been overturned, and this is now virtually a secular state. And that those countries which still have very strong religions in them, religious doctrines, are not necessarily the happiest ones. And therefore I look forward certainly to the time when they are got rid of too. And final point, I do believe that there are some big intellectual challenges for religions coming up. I try to indicate one, how we regard human behaviour, regarding it as a necessary product of people's environment and heredity. There will be tremendous consequences of that, how we treat criminals and all the rest of it. That's something which atheists and humanists will have to deal with as well as everybody else. But it has a damaging ideological effect on many religions. Thank you.
Thank you, Norman, for calling me an atheist. I appreciate that.
I think I answered partly my study with the last point I made, but one of the things about religion, I think,
is that it is a seeking of the truth. We haven't actually mentioned that word before and now, so I introduced that right at the end, the notion of truth. And truth is a difficult thing to understand. But one of the things that I think makes religion most relevant today out of all that is that when we do seek the truth and we discover the truth, one of the important things that religion can do is speak that truth to power. It's a prophecy, it's a prophetic act. And that's what I mean when we have a responsibility as people of faith to speak truth to power. The world is not going well at the moment. Would you agree? There are things happening in our world which are difficult, and there is not enough speaking of the truth to power. When power becomes unaccountable and considers itself more important than the truth, then we have tyranny. And actually religion can bring us back to earth. I almost said amen then. That's how much I think of it.
Alright, so in conclusion, I just want to say that religion makes you believe things that you don't even understand. Religion makes you hate people that you don't even know. Religion keeps you from thinking on your own, and it's merely an act of submission. When will we be able to discover true kindness? Religionists say that there is no moral without religion, but when you have a closer look on religion-based morals, you can see that they are kind of messed up. How can religion be the offspring of moral if so many achievements of modern culture, such like the Enlightenment, science, human rights, freedom of speech, acceptance of homosexuals, acceptance of disabled people, equality of women, and so on and so forth, had to be won against the resistance of religion? Man does not require a God to be moral. Religion divides more than it unites. We have scientists creating artificial life, but that is supposed to be something only God can do. Now, religion today is so outdated that one cannot follow the Bible truly without basically becoming an Amish. People have become pragmatic. They want to see the explanation before the actual fact. So you simply cannot fool 7 billion people forever, and neither can 4,000 different religions do this forever. Thank you.
Well, we've had a very lively, interesting discussion today, and I think we should remember that today's debate is not about whether we should like or hate conventional religions. It's about whether religion is relevant or remains relevant in today's society. And as the opposition has actually admitted, and actually now agrees with us, that religion is relevant and plays a strong role. Maybe he doesn't want that to be the case, but indeed it is, and that's really what we're arguing today. Should be the motion should be opposed for that reason. I would say this, that religion's role in society, you can cite the bad points, but I can cite bad points in every human civilization and culture. There are also good points, such as being counterintuitive, where the religion says love your enemies or repel evil with good, as the Quran says. These are counterintuitive things. To actually forgive your enemies and help them is something that a rationalist or a materialist might not accept. And that is the purpose of religion, is to tell you that ignore the lobbyists, the monetary groups, the ultra-nationalists, the materialists, and do something good because it is good. And that is the effect of religion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all of your speeches. Right before we do the vote again, I would like to thank you, our sponsors, who are Alan and Overy and PwC and Teach First, for allowing us to organise these debates and hold them. So now we'll do the final vote in order to see which side is winning. So those who believe that religion is not relevant in today's society, please raise your hand. And those who do believe that religion is relevant in today's society, Hello. And also, I've just been reminded that there is a Christmas debate going on in December, so more information will be on the Facebook groups. Join the Facebook groups. And the results, we'll go for the results. Wait for the results!
Well, so basically, as you could see, it was an overwhelming will for the relevance of religion in modern society, and they managed to increase the share of the vote.
Excellent.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.